Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a Learning and Growing webinar on using AI to improve writing prompts. Our presenter today is Matthew Curtis of University of Southern California. My name is Sidra, and I'll be your moderator today for Hawks Learning. We will have a live Q&A session after the presentation, so please enter any questions you have into the Q&A module as we go, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. I'll now hand it over to our presenter.
Thank you for that introduction. Welcome everyone to this session on how to use AI to improve writing prompts. I'm going to do a share screen using PowerPoint, and I'm going to encourage you to load whatever AI program you like to use. I'm going to refer a lot to ChatGPT, and I'll talk briefly about that in a few minutes if you're not at all familiar with anything to do with AI. As I'm talking and presenting, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat window, and I'll circle back to them at the end of the session. If I see it pop up during my talk, I'm happy to kind of respond in the here and now. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. You should be seeing my PowerPoint loading. I'm going to go into presentation mode. You can see it's about a 25-slide presentation. So, and we are in screen share mode now. So this talk is going to break down into two parts. How to use AI, ChatGPT for teacher, for you, to generate new writing prompts, and how to use ChatGPT for the student to generate new writing prompts. So I'm going to use the phrase ChatGPT to represent all AI programs. There's a growing number of AI programs out there, for example, Bard and other ones. Then for the purposes of this talk and for much of the way they use in academia, to me, they are arguably all interchangeable. So you don't have to use ChatGPT. You're welcome to use other platforms. If you have access to AI, I recommend you go ahead and load it up now. So I'll be giving you some prompts and suggestions for things you can enter into the AI program as I'm talking. And then at points in this presentation, I'm going to pause my screen share and jump onto ChatGPT and show you the responses it gives to my command prompts and command queries and questions I enter in there. And that would be especially helpful for those of you who don't currently have an account or access to an AI program. I guess on that point, it's helpful to highlight for those of you who have minimal or no familiarity with the AI programs, things like ChatGPT, they are free to use. You just sign up with your Gmail or other account and you can go ahead and use it for free. So something else to highlight about this talk is I'm very much deliberately focused on making it concrete and applied and directly useful today and tomorrow to your teaching, as opposed to abstract and theoretical. Obviously, both avenues, concrete and abstract, have very much equally useful importance and implications. But I wanted to focus on the concrete and applied today. As I mentioned verbally, I recommend you opening up ChatGPT or a similar program. I'm regularly going to pause and encourage you to try things with AI. And as I mentioned again, I'm using ChatGPT to represent all AI programs out there. So one boring slide to get out of the way. This is, to me, what I consider a basic prompt. It's going to provide a situation, what to write about, and directions, how to write. So it might be directions could be make sure you include for authors from the course readings, make sure you include 10 academic citations. We're going to focus today on the situation, the what to write about. So when I think about writing prompts, this is a common problem that I encounter when I create my writing prompts for my classes, and a common problem I see with talking to my colleagues and just talking to students in general, how they're finding academia and their courses. There's a lack of student choice. Even when we provide multiple prompts to students, it's still a constrained finite number, and it's hard to cater to all the diverse interests that the students in your class have. So regardless of how amazing of a teacher you are or how bad of a teacher you are, whatever number of prompts you're providing to your students, there's a lack of student choice. One of the reasons for this small number of writing prompts I used to give my students and my colleagues still sometimes give students, and maybe applies to you, is it's hard to write good prompts. I think we can likely all churn out a whole bunch of prompts fairly quickly in the space of a few minutes if we had to. But when the students came to actually use those prompts, or we're grading the papers the students write in response to those prompts, we quickly learn from, I like this from personal experience, prompts I think might be good end up being disastrous to the students, it's too confusing. I'm holding office hours, responding to questions in class, provide the clarifications that those prompts need because they weren't written well by me. And then naturally, as a result of that lack of student choice and the inclusion of mediocre prompts in my courses, it encourages this lack of student engagement. When you provide a good prompt, it doesn't guarantee student engagement, but it makes it more likely, helps you retain the student's interest and keeps them wanting to be engaged in our class. And one of the core things that I try, like you do in your teaching, is to try and make sure we have student engagement, because once you've got that engagement, they're more likely to retain the information and knowledge you're sharing with them and be motivated to pursue this course content further. And then because I'm lazy and I regularly used to reuse the same prompt semester to semester, the downside of that is it makes it boring for me to grade, because I'm reusing the same prompts. I see the same kind of answers written in the student papers. And I found, like, it makes sense that when you bring in new prompts, you get new essays, new answers, new paragraphs to read, which makes the grading process slightly less painful and slightly less mundane, because you're being exposed to new ideas and new input from the students. So those are the prompt problems. Before AI was out, available for mainstream use, so this would have been as little as a year ago, kind of a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I was trying to create better prompts, I did what many of you probably have done and just did a basic internet search. And there's, unsurprisingly, a number of ways we can find writing prompts online. These are 3 classic examples that I've used in the past, colleagues have used in the past. Just put it up here as a reference resource for you if you want to look at them. So the New York Times has over 1,000 writing prompts. A concrete example there is, would you want your photo or video to go viral? The Chronicle of Higher Education, number one of their prompts is, tell me about a writing rule you are required to follow that seems confusing or pointless. And then the OWL Purdue Writing Lab discuss the theme of X as it appears in all options of A, B, and C. So nothing groundbreaking there, but just a reminder that there's a range of options out there that were historically available to us, and I still go there for ideas even the upcoming semester. So then why would I go to these places to use prompts other people have written? 2 main reasons: convenience. If I can make my life easier, make my job easier, I like doing that, so that's why I went to those sites. And also it reduces our own personal bias. I don't want to get into a long diatribe about bias here, but I recognize that as a white, English-speaking, male, heterosexual father, middle-aged at USC, I have a whole range of biases I have, and we all have our own biases, which are unique to you and who you are. And understandably, even when we try and constrain or restrain or reduce, remove those biases, they are still there. So using prompts other people have written, whilst those prompts are written by a person historically or by AI today, they still have biases. By mixing others' biases with my bias, I can potentially reduce, to some extent, the biases inherent in my character and who I am. So that gets us through the preamble. So now we're going to start looking at how we're using AI to write prompts, or how I'm using AI to write prompts, and how you can use the same process. So as I mentioned, it's broken into 2 parts. How we as the professor, the teacher, can generate new writing prompts, and then how we can work in partnership with the students in our classes to write new prompts. So starting from the basic level, when we load an AI program, we can ask it a whole range of questions. Again, I'm going to assume most of you know about AI and how it works, but if you want more examples or to elaborate, let me know. So here's an example of a prompt that I can put into AI. So what is a writing prompt about social media influencers? That's a class I'm teaching upcoming semester. So you can change that text to reflect what's relevant to your course. You just type in, what is a writing prompt about blank? And you fill in the blank to be what you want it to be. And then if you like GPT's answer, the AI program's answer, you can then, and this is one of the strengths of the AI program, which I'll elaborate on briefly for those who are familiar with it, unlike Google, regular search engine or other internet search engines, the questions and search queries you put in are not part of a conversation, it's not interactive. Whereas within an AI program, you have this interactive conversation. So my first prompt is, what is a writing prompt about social media influencers? I can then engage in a conversation with ChatGPT, to say, no, make it more about young social media influencers, or no, make it more about Instagram social media influencers. Then if I start getting responses that I like, I can then say, give me 2 more prompts like that. So I encourage you to go ahead and try that command prompt now in your AI program of choice. I am going to try and do a new screen share and put the same prompt in on my AI programs. So for those of you who don't have access to AI right now, or have not seen it before, you can start getting insight into what ChatGPT can do for us. So I'm going to put up a new screen share. And let's just go up here and do a new chat. So when you log into ChatGPT, you should now be seeing my internet browser. So when you log into ChatGPT, this is the home screen, and you'll see some example questions you can ask, and capabilities and limitations. So I'll just briefly talk through these for those of you who aren't familiar with the chat programs. So this capability aspect remembers what the user said earlier in the conversation. This is that kind of conversational aspect that a regular internet search cannot provide to you. And we're going to use it to provide follow-up corrections and help improve the responses it can give us. Now, there's a number of limitations. You've probably heard about this if you haven't already used ChatGPT yourself, that the AI will sometimes make up information, create fake sources, create fake facts. Due to the bad PR, they're getting better at not doing harmful things, but you can trick it and force it and push it down rabbit holes and pathways that you will quickly see are problematic. And the way this chat program has been trained, it has minimal knowledge of work post 2021. Now, that's a full problem defect that will get corrected in the near future, I'm sure, and some of the current chat programs, AI programs, have already started correcting that. And if you are skilled or more familiar with AI programs, you can upload information into ChatGPT so you can give it access to sources after 2021. But I guess the relevance of this limitation for us in this webinar right now is that if you are teaching a very cutting edge course to do with maybe social media or economics, things that are happening right now in 2021, 2023, then there's going to be some limitations as to how the chat AI programs can help you. So from that PowerPoint screen, which I know has gone away, and it's going to drop back and prompt out, I can then do what's called send a message in here. So the example I had on my screen is, what is a writing prompt about social media influencers? Now, I realize it didn't talk about this left-hand side. This is just my search history of prompts I've written in last yesterday in June and May. So we don't need to use correct English, but just because I'm presenting, I'll put capital letters and punctuation in. So I type in my prompt. What is a writing prompt about social media influencers? Now, I don't know what answer ChatGPT is going to give. It could give us a good one. It could give us a horrible one or a mediocre one. I click send message. You see here, give me an answer. This one is very quick. Usually it's fairly quick, but sometimes there's a lot of users on the server, and it can be 30 seconds and 90 seconds to generate a response. But here we've got an answer Write a story where a renowned social media influencer loses their internet connection and must navigate the real world, discovering the true impact of their own online persona. So then, reflecting the conversational nature, I can say, give me another one like that. You can see here we've got a slightly longer prompt. In a world where social media dominates society, write a dystopian tale where individuals' worth is determined solely by the number of followers. Explore the life and so on. So you can see that it's starting to give me some ideas I might not have thought of on my own. It's unlikely that ChatGPT will give you a perfect prompt response, but this idea now helps me generate my own prompts that maybe incorporate the negative aspects or the loss of the internet connection that maybe I wouldn't have thought of easily on my own, or maybe would never have thought of on my own. Now, if I didn't like what ChatGPT is saying, I'd say, no, give me one that is more complicated. So you can see now I've got one focusing more on the positive mental health aspects as I requested, but it's dropped out this time the idea of the influencer. So now I need to continue this conversation I'm having with ChatGPT to bring in the influencer. You can see now the prompt's getting longer, but I've now got this idea that I originally wanted: positive mental health effects of following a social media influencer. I'm not going to read out all these four, but once you get an idea you like, you have it start generating multiple prompts along those lines. So in the chat window, Amy just asked, do you cite that you use ChatGPT? So that's a good question. If my students were doing this, I would definitely tell them that I'd want a citation. I wouldn't cite it most likely as a regular citation if I was giving the assignment prompt to the students. But as we'll see later in today's webinar, I would definitely talk verbally about how I've used AI and ChatGPT to generate these prompts, and I do that for two selfish reasons, I guess. The two reasons that I would highlight to the students that I've used the AI would be, one, to try and boost my teaching evaluations and do this more eloquently than what I'm going to start now, but I'd be basically making the point, I'm trying to be a better teacher to make this class more fun for you. Therefore, please like me, like my class, and give me good course evals. So I'm trying to show that I'm invested in the student's success and trying to make the course better for them. My own selfish reasons of wanting the good course evals, but as a teacher, wanting the students to do well and be engaged in the course. So that's the first reason. The second reason is I believe that most of my students, probably all of them next semester, will know about AI powers and will be tempted to cheat or take shortcuts, or at least be using AI to improve their course material. I think you can use these AI programs ethically, but I recognize there's a big temptation to use them to cheat in courses. So by reminding and showing the students that I'm using AI as a professor, it makes, my hope is it's going to remind them that I know what ChatGPT and other programs can do, so that when I say I'll be looking to see if they've used AI software in inappropriate ways in their work, it makes them more likely to believe I can catch them, and it encourages them to act in an academically appropriate way in my courses, and that I'm not some old professor who doesn't know AI and how it's working. Okay, so let's drop back into the PowerPoint now. Oh, I forgot to show you the regenerate response options. So let's just go back into the AI. Let's go back, reuse a short question. Go to the first one. Again, so two things to show here that this was the response I got the first time, and putting in the same question in, you see this time I got a different answer. But the generic response is when you ask a question and you're not sure if you'll answer or want to see a new variation, you can take the generic response and just repost the question and gives a new answer. So now we've got a near future society. And I can say regenerate again. If I want to go back to one of the older answers, you can see up here, I can just scroll through them here. And as Pamela suggested in the chat, one way we can discourage cheating is we can verbally and in writing have the idea of using course material. So for some people that might work well, constraining people to the course material, but some of you understandably will be teaching courses where you want the students to go out and find new material, new sources to support the viewpoints they're making. So again, we've got a large number of people in here. I'm sure you're teaching a wide range of courses from lower level to high students, and where you're focused on different types of writing, where the writing's the focus of the course, where the writing is trying to show the mastery of course content and course material. Okay, so that was our first example. So then we can also continue in what GPT when you put the well, straight away it will explain how much is active. You can ask ChatGPT to tell you this is the cause of that prompt. Let's go back into ChatGPT. Again, depending on your familiarity with the topic, and given you sign up for a webinar workshop on writing and you taught writing classes before, many of these responses are things you would probably do on your own relatively quickly. But on a regular basis, there'll be something coming up that makes you think about the idea or the issue in a way and potentially helps you generate new writing prompts. So here are the pros: thought-provoking, relevance to current issues, character development and growth, critical analysis. Then the cons: saturation, cliches, complex, sensitivity and portrayal. So Janice, I'm sorry you're losing the sound. To my knowledge, other people are doing fine. It is being recorded. I think the sound will be in the recording, so it might be a problem your end more specifically. So again, you can see how this is just continuing this conversational aspect. Okay, so I'm getting a couple more people saying the problem. So I am going to try and do a quick fix. Okay, so I just checked my Wi-Fi and other people in my house are using the internet fine. So I'm hoping things are going to improve, and I for now will keep going, but hopefully it'll just cut back in and work well. Okay, so again, apologies for the sound. We did a sound check this morning and things were working fine. So I think I've got back into the presentation mode. Now, another thing we do with ChatGPT is to make your writing prompts more unique. You can make it somewhat unique to your institution. So rather than a generic prompt, we can make the prompt more specific to your institution. So I work at USC, so I can tell ChatGPT to make the prompt specific to USC. So then, and as people are mentioning in the chat window, if you turn the caption option on, the captioning, that's going to put up in text display what I'm saying verbally. So let's drop back into ChatGPT, and then we can scroll down to where we were. Let's go back to our generic prompt. What is the writing prompt about social media influencers? I want to highlight that ChatGPT is generating responses quickly this morning, which is nice. Sometimes it might pause for a minute or so, and it just happens. So I want to make the prompt specific to USC. Now, you see here that it's, in this case, dropped in the university name. It's talking about the LA influencer scene. So you can see it's making the connection that USC is in Los Angeles. So I found that having prompts like this can make it more enjoyable for the students because it's connecting it to their real life. Whereas those prior prompts about social media influencers in general, that's not catering to the uniqueness of my class. And it's a minor change on my part to have USC be in there, but students in general like it when it's more specific to them. And then I can say make it, so this to me is a generally good response by USC, but I can try say make it more specific to USC. Let's see what it does then. You see it's made it a bit longer and it's dropped the phrasing USC in here a bit more. It's focused a bit more on USC and dropped out Los Angeles, but it's done what I wanted it to. And again, as the professor, I would need to go through and tweak and edit this and just clean it up to make it be a writing prompt I would use. And for some of you, this is understandably a writing prompt that's a bit too long. For others of you, this will be a typical length for a writing prompt. Again, it depends on the type of course you're teaching. So let's back into here. So now, another thing ChatGPT can do for us is it can combine two or more sources. So this can be very concrete. So what is a writing prompt combining Othello and The Simpsons? What is a writing prompt combining Lord of the Rings and Beethoven? Or have it be more abstract? What is a writing prompt combining fantasy fiction and real world politics? Or what is a writing prompt combining human morality and accounting? So let's go ahead and see what ChatGPT gives us for this. So I'm not going to read out the response line by line because that takes up too much time, but you can see bringing these two sources together, so The Simpsons or Lord of the Rings and Beethoven, makes it hopefully for the students seem unique, fun, unusual, interesting. Just like a regular internet search engine is not always going to get things exactly right, so it might have gone with Jessica Simpson rather than The Simpsons and do occasional strange things, but then we just need to remind it and say, no, I mean the animated Simpson, or no, I mean the Shakespearean play, etc. And just similarly well with more abstract things, so this is fantasy fiction and so these type of responses, I think, are things that I could still do and create as a professor, but ChatGPT is working much more efficiently and creating them much more quickly than I could do. So then if we go back to, let's do the new one, let's do this one. I think it is recognizing, typically it recognizes acronyms that are mainstream, or even not that mainstream fairly well. So Lord of the Rings, LOTR. If it's too long, I can say make it shorter. You can see it's reduced it by about 30%. I can have the same question again, make it even shorter. And again, as I talked about already, you can refine and improve these prompts. So I can say, make it more about Frodo, one of the characters in Lord of the Rings, because Frodo was not mentioned anywhere in this prompt. So this time it's taking a bit longer. It's not because the question is harder, it's just because ChatGPT is getting a bit busier at this time of day. Here now we've got the answer. And you see we're getting Frodo coming through regularly in the prompt because that's what we wanted. Now, maybe I wanted to be make it more about Frodo's choices. Again, it's this conversational aspect we're having. This is his choices, crucial decisions, internal struggles. Frodo's choices, you can see it's dumped the word choices in there. Now, maybe I've just seen that, I think, well, rather than being, I've improved the Lord of the Rings aspect, but I want now to be, make it about one of the operas. So rather than Beethoven in general, and now you can see we're bringing in the operatic aspect. Again, if it gets too long, you can make it shorter. It'll keep showing out responses. Again, in my opinion, it's unusual to give you something exactly how you want it, but it's going to give you enough stuff that's along the right lines. So drop back into the PowerPoint. So this is the one we just did. I've walked you through this slide already just now. It's about adding more material or making it more focused where you want the focus to be. You can also have this be specific to text. I won't play this one out in ChatGPT. I assume at this point you get the idea. But as long as the articles or books you're using were published before 2021, ChatGPT have access to those resources. So you can say, here are two texts I use, book 1 and article 3. And ChatGPT says something like, got it, what do we do next? Or how should I use these two texts? And you say, combine both these sources into a writing prompt. And you could do more than 2, you had 4 articles or 3 books. Again, as long as they're before 2021, you can tell ChatGPT, here are the 8 sources I use. Give me 4 prompts combining 3 or more of these sources. And just like it did with the Lord of the Rings and Beethoven example, it will start putting the ideas or information from those texts to create a writing prompt. So at this point, if you jump through all these prompts and hoops I've given you, you're going to have a number of prompts maybe that you like or think you might want to use. So then you can start asking ChatGPT to do a comparison between those prompts. You can say, here are 2 prompts. And again, these would be the prompts that ChatGPT gave me a few minutes ago. I can say, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this prompt, of these 3 prompts? Or I can be more focused and say, which one is more challenging, creative, open to interpretation, contains more ambiguity. Again, ChatGPT will show those ideas. Let's go ahead and do a quick example of that. Rather than doing the comparison, I can say, prompt. That's this prompt. So here, in a good way, is our first example of ChatGPT slightly misunderstanding what I want it to do. So I can circle back and say, no. You see here now it's doing what I want to do. I say no, but that prior prompt is an ambiguity. So you can see it's putting that ambiguity in. So I can say follow-up questions such as, is this creative enough? Make it more creative, create more uncertainty, make it more challenging. And again, ChatGPT will give me those answers. So we can play around with this a bit more, but I also want to get through the second section about using the presentation, using the writing prompts in tandem, in partnership with the students. So hopefully you've seen some things in the last half hour where you can use it as the professor. But this, I think, is the more exciting idea of using ChatGPT in partnership with the students. So when we, the teacher, are doing it, we're working with ChatGPT, we can create 100 prompts fairly quickly if we wanted to with ChatGPT, or we can create these 100 prompts and then cull them, reduce them down to the 3 to 6 prompts that many of us like to use readily in our lectures. There's still problems, though, of using the teacher-generated GPT responses, because when ChatGPT gives me 100 answers, I go through and remove the ones that I think are bad, which brings my bias back into it. And if I give all 100 prompts to the students, understanding, they say, what is this? It's 100 prompts. How do I pick the good ones? Which ones are good? This is too much. So students like choices, but understandably, when they get too many choices, it gets overwhelming for them. So the solution here is the student, a solution, not the solution. A solution here is the student-generated writing prompt. It teaches the students to use GPT, and depending where you're teaching and the topic area or major you're working in, at least for the next few years, there's going to be a proportion of students who don't know how to use the AI programs particularly well. Another benefit I mentioned from earlier is it reminds the students we know what AI programs are, and it gives us a chance to talk about the strengths and weaknesses, such as it creates fake information, it's using outdated information, it still has biases because it's been programmed for the language out there on the web, which is predominantly white male, English-speaking oriented information. And then it has, back to a positive now, it's giving us the student agency in prompt creation and the student ownership of that prompt. So let's 6 slides left. Let's talk through a way I envision using ChatGPT this semester, and a way I started to use it last semester. So in the class, I've talked about ChatGPT, mentioning some of those things I just mentioned. You can even go into ChatGPT and say, what are your strengths and weaknesses? What should I tell students about using you and not using you? And I'll give you some suggestions. And then I could show to the class 2 or 3 writing prompts that I used last semester. And then I would remind students of the class topics. This course is about, let's go back to my earlier example of social media influencers. We're looking at the effect of social media on individuals' physical and mental health, and its used in marketing and advertising. And I'd say to the students, one of the things I want to assess in this class is how you can apply the knowledge I've given you and illustrate that knowledge in writing an essay, a paper, a response that shows you can apply course knowledge to creative situations, or whatever my goals are of the class. So then I tell the students to go ahead and log in to their AI program. I recommend having the students sign up for an account before class, otherwise you're going to lose 20-30 minutes when people sign up for accounts. It's a quick, easy process to sign up for an account. I'd say go on and on your own, just create some prompts without using the internet, without using AI. What would be 3 prompts that you would write? And then each student individually creates 3 prompts. And then I create groups of 3 students. And I say in your groups, share the prompts you wrote. talk about their strengths and weaknesses, and then each group pick a prompt that you want to share with the class. And then let's say I've got a class of 21 students, divided nicely by 3, so I'll get 7 prompts that I could write on the projector, whiteboard, chalkboard, whatever I'm using. And so these are the student-generated prompts. Here's 7 prompts that we came up with. So I can talk a bit more about ChatGPT and how it generates ideas. I can show them some concrete examples. Again, highlight that I recognize it has weaknesses and problems. And then I'd show the students some examples from the earlier part of today's presentation about asking ChatGPT to create writing prompts, highlight the problems of the prompts and that there's biases and it's my bias and the AI's bias, and working together with ChatGPT, we can create prompts that are less prone to our own individual and the teacher professor's bias. Again, remind the students that the prompt should cover Lord of the Rings and Beethoven, or social media influencers, or real world politics, whatever it happens to be. And then remind them that when they are writing these prompts, that I want them to show creativity or show understanding, whatever it happens to be. So then again, we're getting in these groups, they're engaging in peer review and peer teaching, which are buzzwords that look good on teaching philosophy statements and are good in evals and when you're talking to colleagues. So we've got these ideas up on the board. So then we can move into part 2, which was where we are showing the prompts I wrote earlier with the class. And then for homework, or you can do this in class time if you wanted to, for homework, you have the students generate the writing prompts working with ChatGPT. So you can give them some examples if you wanted to, give them things that the prompt should cover. And then if you wanted to help illustrate the strengths and weaknesses of ChatGPT, you can start having them work with GPT to write some strengths and weaknesses, have the AI program talk about 5 things they should cover, write the 4 sentences of the paper, and critique. So looking at the logic behind giving them these prompts, if the students generate 3 writing prompts, it starts the process, but rather than writing multiple prompts or an ambiguous number of prompts, giving them 3 makes it less final and intimidating. You can have them ask the ChatGPT program or have the student do it individually to write about the strengths and weaknesses of each prompt. Ask ChatGPT for 5 things they should cover. Ask GPT to write the first 4 sentences of the paper. Have the student critique GPT's first 4 sentences. And then depending how unique you want to make it to each student or how big picture, you could have the students' homework, come back in the next class and put them in breakout groups or breakout rooms if you're on Zoom online and discuss the strengths and weaknesses. As a class, come up with 8 prompts that everyone's going to use. Or you can have this homework here be the basis of each student's individual paper, and that they are going to use their answers to this homework from week 2 or week 3 to form the foundation of their own final paper, and each student's going to create their own unique prompt in tandem with ChatGPT. Again, I guess to recap what we're trying to do here is we're working in partnership with the students to remind them that we know as professors what ChatGPT can do. We're highlighting that we're using the chat program to make the class more unique to their personal interests, because each student has, as we recognize, their own unique interests, and generic writing prompts are not going to cater to every student's personal interest. And then we're moving a bit beyond that by reminding them that ChatGPT can critique things and help them get started and move past that initial writing block. And then if you wanted to, you can push this further and have ChatGPT a regular part of the writing process throughout the remainder of the semester. So I know I'm up on my time. So I told Hawks that I would talk for about 45 minutes. So I'm going to turn off the screen share and open up to questions people might have. So you're welcome to put them in the chat window. don't know if you can unmute and ask it directly, but I think you need to put the questions in the chat window. So hopefully you found that useful. Happy to take any questions. There's nothing new that I have to share, but you're welcome to hang out and ask questions and talk amongst yourselves also in the chat window. You can talk to other people if you know them in the room. And I hope you found that useful. Thank you. Some questions coming in. So Pam is asking, how can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? I don't know if there's an established procedure for that. So
We could probably add it to the resources once we share the link.
yeah, let's do that. Seems the best way. So add it to the resources, we share the links. I'll pass it on to Hawks. If for some reason it doesn't work for anyone, you are welcome to send me an email and I can send you that PowerPoint directly as my email in the chat window.
As for the certificate, you'll receive information on that via email after you, or when you receive the recording.
Great. Margie's saying, I enjoyed this. Thank you, Margie. Never thought about using AA for the students. I've used it to create rubrics and sample papers. Yes, so that's a whole other workshop, but AI is a good way of creating rubrics. It's a very good way, in my opinion, of generating examples that meet different criteria of the rubrics. You can say, write me a sentence or paragraph that shows effective use of free sources or ineffective use of free sources or mediocre use of free sources. Make it better, make it worse, and you can start creating example text that is A grade, B grade, C grade, or whatever levels you want to have in your grading rubric. Jeffrey, thank you for picking up that typo. I read it through again last night and found two other ones I missed from creating earlier. So I appreciate that. I'd like to blame ChatGPT for that error, but unfortunately it was my error. Amanda, thanks for the ideas. You're welcome. I'll be addressing ChatGPT for sure. I'm still developing how I use it in class. So I think, Amanda, we're all working out how to use this. I know colleagues who are far ahead of me. I know colleagues who have still not signed up for an account. So just like the students, I think us as educators are still on a big continuum of how to use it. I think a key thing I want to highlight is this right now, I see it very much as a tool that makes life better for us as educators and life better for the students. Resentfully, it means I have to change much of my course material and take away things that are too easy or too tempting for students to cheat on with ChatGPT. But I think in the long run, it's going to make our job and the students' lives much easier. You're welcome, Susanna.
There's a question in the Q&A module. Can you also do the same thing with integrating videos available online into prompt instructions?
I have not tried that. I don't know. There's probably a program that does do this. What I would do right now, if I was trying to do that, I would get the transcript, dump the transcript in, and then say to ChatGPT, here's a transcript of material, and then use that transcript. Now, if the video has visual stuff that's important and lost that you don't get in the transcript, that gets more complicated. And it's a bit beyond my area. So I guess it's possible. I couldn't spontaneously right now tell you how to do that. I'm sorry. So those of you putting email addresses in the chat window, I will try and email you that PowerPoint, but I'll probably miss a few. So if you don't get an email from me, I will send a follow-up or maybe access by Hawks. So Maxim is asking, is there any best ChatGPT website for the beginner? So I think of myself as a slightly above average internet tech user, but I'm by no means anything special. There are just how-to guides. There's a WikiHow. So I would go into an internet search engine and just say, how do I sign up for an account? But again, the ChatGPT website makes it fairly easy to sign up for an account, which makes sense. They want you to use it. And then, like in many things, I found the best way of using this is to play around with it myself and say, if I ask a question, which questions are working well, which questions are not working well. And then there are lots of recommended scripts or prompts that can be used for different domains. So if you do a Google search of 10 most useful ChatGPT prompts, you'll start seeing suggestions and refinements, and then you can improve your internet search engine. Let's say teaching a course, or want to create grading rubrics. Go back to the earlier example. You say, what are good GPT prompts for creating grading rubrics? And then another thing you can do, really harnessing the power of ChatGPT, is once you've got the account, you can ask ChatGPT, what is the best way as a professor of using you? Or how can you help me be a better teacher? Or how might my students teach using you? And it'll start giving answers and suggestions to help you work through the process. So if there's a common assignment such as summary of an article, how does ChatGPT handle this for multiple students? So if a student, maybe I misunderstand the question, if you put an article into ChatGPT and said to summarize it, there's eventually a finite capacity of unique responses it can generate. But in a class of 20 students, I would say all 20 will be mostly unique. Some of them, just because ChatGPT makes mistakes, will misunderstand and missummarize or miss important points. But ChatGPT can, if you had a class of 400 students at a big state school, and you had all 400 summarize an article, ChatGPT wouldn't care, it could summarize all 400 in the same 5 minutes of all the students logged on during class time at the same time and did it. Yes, I think students, I'm somewhat cynical, students are going to cheat. They were cheating before ChatGPT, and they're going to cheat after ChatGPT, and they'll cheat in new ways. I feel, again, I wasn't around, I'm not that old, that when calculators and smartphones became more widespread for students, I think there's a similar anxiety that, oh no, they're going to do all the math calculations using the calculator. We don't need to teach matrix algebra and differentiation, integration, and so on. We've now just changed the way we teach math or do fact checking to have the internet or the calculator be a tool. So I'd imagine 30 years ago, before the internet, people might have said, list all the European capitals or something, or the population sizes, and the students would be expected to go to the library and get that information and write it down. That homework assignment would have changed because it takes 5 minutes to do that online now. And it's going to improve and change, hopefully improve and definitely change how we teach and use our resources in our assignments and discussion boards and homework. Mike is just echoing that point. Wyatt, I like a few of the earlier tips, active at the end. Yes, I think, and this is maybe just my style of teaching, the more we can integrate ChatGPT and work in tandem and empower the students, I think that applies to most things in teaching. It's going to make the students more engaged and make you more interactive with the students. Sidra, there's a question about, will we have access to the transcript of this Q&A when we get the PowerPoint?
Yep. Once we send out a recording of the entire webinar, they'll have access to the Q&A portion as well. It's all recorded in the same recording.
Great, thank you. And then Melanie is saying, should half a dozen students use ChatGPT to write full papers in my class last semester, get them 0 since the papers are not original to them, verify the AI contact, give me the agree with the zeros, give my academic policy. That is a big conversation, Melanie. I guess the general question or general response to everyone and to you also is that I would definitely check with my chair or whoever's your contact in the department to make sure it's not going to blow back on you and create problems, because understandably the departments, I don't know how many students are in your class. If you've got a class of 100 students, if you fail 6 of them, and assuming a 0 would make them fail, that It's going to create political complexities, especially if the students appeal. My big concern right now is that, to my knowledge, there's not a way of proving they use the AI. It's not like I use Turnitin to find plagiarism. And I can say to the students, here's the source you used, and here's how it matches what's in your paper. And there's no quote marks, there's no citation. This is USC's definition of plagiarism. And objectively, often if it's vague, I verify with a colleague. So I can say objectively, by USC standards, this is plagiarism. The way the AI detection works via Turnitin and other places is that it's not foolproof. It just gives a strong indication. So then the problem I see is that it's your word or the department's word against the student. And if they appeal up the various avenues of the appeal process, it gets politically expensive and time drain for you to deal with. At the same time, I want to uphold the ethical standards. I don't want students cheating in my class, but I think it's very much a gray area. And I think it would very much depend on what support you're going to get from the department. Because to be cynical, it wouldn't surprise me if, especially if you're an adjunct, you could lose your job if half the students in your class cheated using ChatGPT, and they really did, and you pursued it and gave them all Fs. I could see it being detrimental to future job prospects. Again, that's just my personal opinion, but that would be my concern. So Deanna's asking you which program you use to confirm this. Lit is asking, how do you balance using ChatGPT to assist students without having students simply use ChatGPT to write the entire essay? So that's when that part of the class where I highlight the problems that ChatGPT has, that it makes up fake information, that it misses important points. So when the students are in their groups generating writing prompts and combining sources, what will usually happen, and you'll probably see this when you're using it yourself, is it'll create a prompt that's bizarre or makes no sense. So it might talk, don't make it too specific, but maybe we use an opera that was not written by Beethoven. Or maybe it'll talk about, in Lord of the Rings, it revolves around a ring. Maybe it'll talk about the ring being a necklace or jewelry. So then I'll highlight that to the students and say, look, as powerful as ChatGPT is, and it's always getting better, it's still making these fundamental mistakes. So if you use it to write your essay or to cheat too much or use it as too much of an aid, it's going to be apparent to me as a professor, and it's going to have big problems in there. And this would hold true in the real world too, in your internships or jobs post-graduation or jobs right now, that your boss is not going to be happy if you use ChatGPT to write the PR statement, to write the social media post, and it's talking about the competitor in positive ways. But Farron echoing that Turnitin is not reliable. Again, I agree, Turnitin is very effective, but it's not foolproof, which is probably true of most things in life. So Antonio, yes, how do you verify that students have used ChatGPT to write a whole paper? I don't know of any way to confirm. You get a strong suggestion, and then if they have used ChatGPT to write a whole paper, usually it's not written that well. So in some ways, I think my compromise right now is that if I'm suspicious they've used ChatGPT, I might call them in for a meeting. Again, this is getting kind of beyond the scope of what my webinar was on, but so I'm talking more spontaneously, that I would call them in for a meeting and see what they are willing to admit to, and kind of just poke around and see what they say. But if it becomes my word against the student's word, there's no way that I know of to verify that. I mean, Turnitin and the AI detection programs can make strong suggestions, but they're not guaranteed. Thank you, Melanie. So Sharon suggesting putting writing samples. I think that's a good resource. One of the problems I have with writing samples is that they can get very big and overwhelming. And in my classes, there's often multiple good ways to write a paper. If I only show one or two examples, all my students are going to have to write in that one style, and it's not going to be the best style for all of them. So I think it would depend on the class and who your students are. So Wyatt is talking about follow-up discussions and having kind of one-to-one meetings. quiet and speed reading yours, and I agree with you. I'm just going to, for reasons of moving forward, just going to skip past that one. But for those of you who like the idea of thinking more about how to work with the students, Wayne has a good answer there. And I think I've gone through all those questions. Thank you. I hope you found that useful. Getting those big theoretical abstract questions to think about with ChatGPT. We're starting to get those in the chat, but again, the focus here was making it very practical and applied, so you can start using it tomorrow or next semester in your class. You can just walk in on day one and say, let's load up ChatGPT, and I'm going to show you some of the strengths and weaknesses and how it's going to be helpful and a harm to you as a student in my class. Okay, I think I got everyone's questions. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you all for attending today. We will be emailing you a link to view the recording of this webinar once it becomes available. If you or any of your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing webinar series, please submit your proposals to the Learning and Growing website, which I'm going to go ahead and link in the chat now so it's easy reference. These free webinars are brought to you by Hawks Learning, an innovative educational courseware company. To learn more about our mastery-based course materials and how Hawks can enhance learning outcomes for you and your students, please visit hawkslearning.com, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and thank you all for attending.